Hello, once again, Kenny Jacobs from Bloomington, Illinois. I'm going to do another video this evening talking about current events as it relates to Bible prophecy. And you didn't really think that I wouldn't be able to find something to talk about tonight, did you? Because, again, obviously there's so much going on. I mean, there is so much to talk about. Might as well expect there to constantly be things to talk about from a prophetic standpoint from here on out, because we excuse me, we are living in the last of the last days. So there is just so much going on, and it's escalating at an ever-increasing pace. So, without further ado, let's get started. Here's the first news story I want to cover tonight. This is out of the Jerusalem Post today, and the headline reads, UN says Israel's use of force against Hamas is disproportionate. Deputy Secretary General says, what I think we should all remember today is to try to put the human being at the center. Well, shouldn't Hamas be putting this human being at the center as well? Why are they just condemning Israel? Let's get into the article, though. Okay, here we go. It says, the United Nations once again called for a ceasefire on Wednesday, condemning the attacks on two UNRWA facilities in a week and on a power plant that has left Gazans without electricity. Deputy Secretary General Jan Eliasson said it is plain to see that Israel's use of force has been disproportionate and that the Palestinian casualties have been excessive. Okay, hold on a minute. Let me just stop there for a second and comment a little bit. First of all, and this isn't the first time I've heard something like this, it is not Israel's problem that they're more powerful than Hamas. Hamas should not have attacked Israel. Hamas shouldn't have started this battle. Hamas should not be storing their rockets in schools and hospitals. Hamas should not be gathering civilians around where they're firing rockets to make them get killed, to make Israel look bad. Oh, geez. All right, so let's go on. We are mentioning the issue of justice and accountability, and we are not at a stage where we can take that second step, Eliasson said. He said it was too early to talk about what steps the UN and the international community might take because the recent reports on the recent attacks haven't been finalized. John Ging, the Director of Operations for the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, said the cement Hamas used to build tunnels was not cement provided by the UN, and that all UN supplies are accounted for. However, there are rockets now stored in 3 different UN schools that Hamas has stored rockets in. Let's go on down here. I just want to finish this article with I want to read the bottom of it. Well, hold on. It says, Eliasson acknowledged that the IDF is taking steps to inform Gazans of forthcoming strikes, and that is absolutely true. The IDF is doing that. In fact, they've aborted some strikes because they saw civilians and they didn't want to kill them. But he noted that by looking at the number of civilian casualties, it should be apparent that Israel's return of force was disproportionate. Again, I got to stop. The world has not seen anything yet. Just wait. You want to see disproportionate use of force? Wait until God gets involved and fights for Israel against her enemies. During the Gog and Magog war, during Psalm 83 war, which looks like is starting, and obviously during the Battle of Armageddon. This is nothing compared to what's coming. Alright, let's go on. Both officials urged restraint by all parties involved. Eliasson emphasized that no country is exempt from living up to the Geneva Conventions. But let's just go down here. I want to finish with what he just said. Well, he says the Gazans feel that the world has lost its humanity. And he says, what I think we should all remember today is to try to put the human being at the center. Eliason said, pulling out of his jacket a pocket copy of the UN Charter. This is what it's all about. Well, I beg to differ, because why don't you pull out a pocket copy of the Hamas Charter, which calls for the total annihilation of Israel? Because this is what it's all about. That's why Hamas keeps firing rockets at Israel. And then we condemn Israel for abandoning the peace talks for a two-state solution after Abbas and the PA signed a unity agreement with Hamas, the known terrorist group that wants to wipe Israel out, who's now involved in a war with Israel. And all Israel's doing is protecting their citizens. They have to do what they have to do to protect Israel. They've done everything they can to avoid civilian deaths. But Hamas keeps them ensuring that as many civilians as possible gets killed, because they want that to happen. They don't value any human life. They just don't. And they want to make Israel look bad. But let's talk about charters, Mr. Eliason. And need I remind you again that Hamas's charter calls for the total annihilation of Israel. All right. Wow. So again, it's just going to get continuing to escalate, and the world is turning against Israel exactly like the Bible says. And this is ultimately what it's all about, UN. The UN is the most worthless organization on the planet. They exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is the one world government, the New World Order. Period. All right. Let's go to another story. This one is out of the Eretz Sheva. This is has implications toward the Psalm 83 war. It says, here's the headline: Hamas calls on Hezbollah to join resistance against Israel. Hamas spokesperson reportedly urges Hezbollah to open the Lebanese front as IDF operation in Gaza expands. Hamas has urged Hezbollah to join the fight against Israel, according to multiple sources, after Israel's self-defense operation against the terror organization in Gaza has expanded further. We hope the Lebanese front will open, and together we will fight against this formation, Israel. Deputy head of Hamas's political bureau, Musa Abu Marzouk, told Russian news agency, there's no arguing that Lebanese resistance could mean a lot, he stressed. The remarks surfaced just minutes after Hamas rejected yet another humanitarian ceasefire from Israel, which had expanded its operation in Gaza earlier Wednesday. Again, Hamas is the one that keeps rejecting the ceasefires, yet Israel's the one that keeps getting condemned for firing and fighting. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has expressed support for Hamas's fight against the Jewish state on multiple occasions, including in an extended series of comments last week calling Hezbollah's Hamas's true partners. We in Hezbollah stand beside the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance without an exception. We will not spare any means of support that we can and are able to provide. We feel that we are true partners with the Palestinian resistance. Your victory is our own. Nasrallah said that Hezbollah was closely following up political and field developments in Gaza. To the Zionist I say, in Gaza you are moving in a circle of failure, and do not go to the circle of suicide or a total collapse, he declared. I love when they threaten Israel, because God is going to step in. In the Psalm 83 war, Hezbollah and Lebanon are going to be involved in that war. When the confederacy of Muslim Islamic nations come up against Israel to wipe them off the map, as they say, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. And it's going to be a bad, bad day for all those involved when they come up against Israel. All right, let's look at another article. This is out of the Times of Israel today. Headline: Iranian official will arm West Bank with missiles. Former Tehran defense advisor says Tel Aviv and Haifa will be much easier to hit from Judea and Samaria. He said that Tehran would seek to arm Palestinians in the West Bank with strategic weapons, including missiles, to target Tel Aviv and Haifa. The Iranian researcher Amir Mousavi told Lebanon's TV channel that this week that a major reshuffle awaits the region as new and significant fronts will be opened all of a sudden to support the Palestinian cause in the West Bank and Gaza. Again, new and significant fronts will be opened all of a sudden. Sounds like Psalm 83 war. As these new fronts are open. A new front must be opened from the West Bank after it has been armed, especially with missiles, Mousavi said in comments by the Middle East, relayed by the Middle East Media Research Institute, because we know very well that the distance between the West Bank and Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other areas is much shorter than the distance from Gaza. Therefore, simple means are required. There is no need for long-range missiles. Short-range missiles can change the entire picture in the occupied lands. And those lands are occupied by the Jews because God returned to them there in the last days to give them back their land. Mousavi added that Gaza would also receive increased military support from Iran as we continue to appease Iran and trust that they want peace and that they are wanting nuclear power just for peaceful purposes. When they sit on all this oil, they don't need nuclear power. They want to destroy Iran, they want to destroy America, and we're going to continue to let them build the bombs that will allow them to try to do so. As for the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank and has in recent years cooperated closely with Israel on security issues, we hope that the brothers in the Palestinian Authority will help rather than impede this. On Tuesday, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei urged the Islamic world to arm Palestinians to allow them to counter what he called Israel's genocide in the Gaza Strip. Khamenei said Israel was acting like a rabid dog and a wild wolf, causing a human catastrophe that must be resisted. The U.S. President issued a fatwa that the resistance is disarmed so that they cannot respond to all those crimes committed by Israel. The Supreme Leader said, referring to Barack Obama's call for the disarmament of terrorist groups and the demilitarization of Gaza. We say the opposite. The world, and especially the Islamic world, should arm the Palestinian people. Guys, if you think that this situation with Hamas and Israel is going to go away anytime soon, it certainly does not seem to be the case. It seems it's going to lead us directly into the Psalm 83 war and the Gog and Magog war. And again, we're just allowing Iran to continue to just kind of make threats to Israel and the United States and keep working on a nuclear weapon. So, need I remind you that in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is the war of Gog and Magog. And the nations that will be involved in that are Russia, Turkey, and their Prime Minister Erdogan, or whatever his name is, has been making incredibly anti-Semitic remarks lately and calling for the destruction of Israel as well. Libya, which is a mess right now, and I know that we just, I think, called all of our people away from the Libyan embassy. I think 80 people were evacuated from there because something's going on in Libya. Ethiopia is also listed in the war of Gog and Magog. And Persia, which is modern-day Iran. And obviously Vladimir Putin is feeling very empowered these days and getting the best of Barack Obama every time the two of them seem to battle. And the situation with them in the Ukraine is growing. We can see the Psalm 83 war and the Gog and Magog war beginning to form right now. Now, wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, that's certainly signs of the last days in Mark 13, Matthew 24, Luke 21. But there is one other tremendously exciting sign of the last days. And every time I see this in the news, I get very, very, very excited about it, because it, again, just goes to show, one, the truth of God's Word, and two, we are the generation that will see the culmination of all things in the return of Jesus Christ. What am I referring to? Well, the third temple. The third temple in Israel. There has not been a temple in Israel for the Jewish people to worship since AD 70. AD 70, when it was destroyed by the Roman Empire. Well, here we are in 2014. And they're talking third temple and Mideast peace. So again, I'm going to put a link to all of these articles in the description box. But wow, is this one an exciting article. This is the Global Jewish News Source, JTA. That's what this is in. The title of the article today: One group's proposal for Mideast peace, build the third temple. As Egypt, Qatar, the U.S., and the UN write proposals for Israel and Hamas ceasefires, one organization based in Jerusalem's Old City hopes to compose a peace plan of a different kind, a detailed architectural blueprint for the third Jewish temple on Jerusalem's Temple Mount. The Temple Institute, which has recreated 60 vessels to be used in the third temple and which sponsors educational programs about the temple worldwide, has created a $100,000 campaign to draft plans for a third temple. Building the temple, says the campaign statement, would get this, usher in a new era of universal harmony and peace, as prophesied in the Bible. Let me read that again. Building the temple would usher in a new era of universal harmony and peace, as prophesied in the Bible. It is not enough to wait and pray for the third temple. It's a biblical obligation to build it. According to Rabbi Chaim Richmond, the Institute's international director, the temple would stand in the present location of the Dome of the Rock, a Muslim shrine. Muslims revere the Mount as the Haram al-Sharif or noble sanctuary. But Richmond did not set a target date for breaking ground for the construction project. The temple will be built when the world when the world will want us to build the temple. The Jewish people have a responsibility to all of humanity, including Islam, Richmond said. I don't expect it to come about through any sort of confrontation or any sort of military maneuver. The Jews have to represent good in the world, light in the world. Richmond quoted the verse in Isaiah calling the temple a house of prayer for all nations. But recently, the Temple Mount has been the scene of confrontation. Palestinian groups have repeatedly protested Jewish groups visiting the mount in recent weeks. Referring to these incidents, Richmond said the mount is overrun by terrorists. This is a tangible fact. Rebuilding the temple is the next step to Israel's current military operation in the Gaza Strip. We cannot be the people we're supposed to be without the Holy Temple, he says. So what if we root out the Gaza tunnels and missiles? Then what are we doing with our lives? The redemption of humanity is dependent on the Jewish people. What an interesting article. How amazing is that? Guys, the third temple will be and is going to be built. And I will not be a bit surprised. Remember, Pope Francis has been calling for peace. Pope Francis got the Jewish people and the Muslims together for a prayer meeting. I would not be... And by the way, the Vatican has control of a lot of the religious sites in Jerusalem. I would not be a bit surprised if Pope Francis, in an effort to sign, or to help, maybe not sign, but to help usher in this peace agreement of Daniel 9:27, might assist in helping pull together the Muslims and the Jewish people for a shared Temple Mount and the rebuilding of the third temple. Now keep in mind, and I go back up here, and it says in this article that this will usher in a new era of universal harmony and peace. No, it really won't. It will start a final 7-year period of time where people will think there's universal harmony and peace because there will be an Antichrist who seems to have all the answers, who signs this false covenant that he plans on breaking and will break 3.5 years in to the final 7-year period of time, that will lead to almost the entire extinction of the human race. Jesus said in Matthew 24, unless those days be shortened, no flesh should be saved alive. That's what this so-called peace and harmony agreement that's coming up is going to lead to. There will be peace, but not until the end of the 7-year period of time, when the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, returns in power and glory and destroys the armies of the world and the Antichrist, the false prophet, and sets up his millennial reign here on earth. And Christians will rule and reign with him for 1,000 years. But let's real quickly close this out with some scripture that backs up the third temple and the Antichrist. Here we go. Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. I read this verse quite often because it's very much in the news today. It very much applies to current events. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Again, if you're new to Bible prophecy, if you're new to this channel, the 1 week here is 7 years, not 7 days. It is a 7-year period of time, and he's going to the Antichrist is going to, in the middle of that week, 3.5 years, enter the temple where the sacrifices are offered and cause them to cease. We're going to go to a couple other scriptures, 2 Thessalonians and Revelation, but you know what? I'm going to make a quick stop in Matthew 24, and I'm sorry I do not know the verse off the top of my head, but I can find it. Here it is, Matthew 24, verse 15. This is the words of Jesus Christ. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, which is exactly what I just read, Daniel 9:27, stand in the holy place. Whosoever readeth, let him understand, and let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. That is the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist enters the temple, declares himself to be God, and forces the world to worship him and accept his mark. So let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, also known as the Antichrist, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Again, for him to sit in the temple, there must be a temple. The abomination of desolation cannot occur without a temple. Let's look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 1. And there was, this is John in his vision, said, and there was given me a rod like unto and there was given me a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple, leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months, 3.5 years. And again, measure the temple. There is going to be a third temple built. It will be, again, probably a shared Temple Mount where the Al-Aqsa Mosque is still there for the Muslims, and the Jewish people will have their temple. That's why it says, leave out the outer court for the Gentiles. And then let's just real quickly look at Revelation chapter 13 when it talks about the two beasts. the Antichrist and the false prophet. And let's look at verse 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And let's scroll down here to chapter 13, verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast. Now this is the false prophet. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. That is what's going to happen once the Antichrist enters the third temple, which again they're talking about building right now, and declares himself to be God, forces the world to worship him, and that's when the mark of the beast will be instituted around the world. And people will have the decision to make. Worship the beast, go to hell. Don't worship the beast, get your head cut off, go to heaven. I know what I would pick. All the signs are here. It's mind-boggling, really. I've been studying Bible prophecy since I was 16 years old. 30 years I've been studying Bible prophecy. I shouldn't be surprised, but when you see it really happening every single day, it's hard to not be just absolutely blown away and amazed. It's absolutely overwhelming, it's emotional, it's incredible.